presence, and we know that you understand our prayer even though we might be a little off key. So please help us to be able to focus on your love and your presence. Amen.
Amen.
Well, today in the gospel passage, there's a lot going on, and there's three distinct characters that I think really kind of call me to kind of question. I wonder what those three different characters, how they viewed Jesus. How did they see Jesus in their life, and how did that kind of call them to action, or how did that call them to behave a little bit differently through their lens that they understood Jesus through? And the three people are, first of all, Matthew, the tax collector, this poor widow who had been isolated for all those years, and then this synagogue leader, the temple leader's daughter, and the temple leader himself. So let's think about these three people. First of all, Matthew. So Matthew, it says he was sitting at a tax collector's table, meaning that he was collecting taxes. So if we were to go back a couple thousand years, maybe like we shed some of our ideas about what IRS people are, and now today think about what taxes are, to think about like, what was it like to be a tax collector then? Well, to be that person was to have been really societally quite an outcast. These were people that were part of an imperial oppressive system. I mean, they were signed on to be part of this system that overtaxed people, took their money when maybe it wasn't really righteous for them to be able to take the money that they took, and would probably consistently, they were always well known for taking too much. They would take more than what the government expected, and then they would keep some of it for themselves. And it was just like kind of a little bit off the top, a little for you, a little for me. So it's kind of, they were basically crooks. So really, when you think about it. But here they were sort of used in a way, used by this imperial oppressive system. They were sort of pulled into this system, and then they had to kind of pass on the oppression to the people that they were taxing. So it was a really tough position for them to be in. So I'm imagining Matthew, gosh, thinking in his head, I've got to feed my family, I have to take care of my wife, I have to make sure that my needs are met. So, and I've been sucked into this difficult sort of oppressive political system here. How do I do this? I've got to try to cheat a little bit to make a little something for myself because they're not paying me what I deserve. But I feel so ashamed of it. I feel so, when I look at the people that I'm charging these taxes, I feel worthless and feel just really tough and feel like some sense of self-hate even. I wonder if that's what was going on in Matthew's heart as all this was happening to him. But then here comes Jesus. I mean, I bet that he was aware of maybe Jesus, Matthew was, and I bet he thought, that guy's going to avoid me. He's going to just kind of maybe call me out like he calls out the people in the synagogue sometimes. He's going to say something negative about me. But really, Jesus said, hey, come follow me. And what results there is eating a meal together, which in that culture was a big deal. It was a sign of you're included. You belong. You're here. You're part of us. That was the message of people sitting at a table together and eating a meal together. So here is this poor guy, Matthew, who'd been kind of pulled into this system that was not a good system, and feeling so worthless and so self-doubt, maybe some self-hate and shameful about himself, probably thinking, I'm not even going to look at this guy who's coming to talk to me, and the next finds himself belonging as a symbol of belonging and oneness and community. I bet that he felt so great and was able to say, I can leave this behind. I can shape my life anew. I can be in a new way following this guy and be a part of this thing. I can belong to this. I don't have to be tied up in all this garbage that I feel like I've been tied up in for so long. I can be free of my shame and free of my self-hate because I know that I'm loved and I belong. I think what an amazing story and what an amazing sort of witness for what it can be for our life. I don't know if you all have ever felt those moments, maybe not as extensively as Matthew here, or maybe so, where because of who you were, or because of something that you were involved in, or something maybe you got sucked into, that you felt shameful, or maybe felt self-hate, or felt disregard for yourself, or something really negative. But to be able to recognize that there are points in our life where we do belong. I just have to tell a quick little story. A number of years ago, I mean, I've felt shame for who I am and for being who I am, and felt kind of a lot of self-hate in myself a lot of times. And so Jeff and I went to this Pride Fest in D.C. It was amazing because here's this thing that I've hated myself for and really not understood and all that kind of stuff. There were literally hundreds of thousands of people cheering and clapping and singing and so excited for people that are in the LGBT community. And it was this amazing thing. And I was wearing sunglasses and a hat so that I would not be recognized. And so here's this thing going on, and I'm like thinking, wow, these people are excited about this thing that I hate about myself. Maybe I do belong. Maybe it is okay. Maybe I can be loved by God and other people in some way. So in a way, those people people were sort of Jesus, like Jesus was to Matthew. I feel like those people were Jesus to me. Now that might not have been the first thought in their mind as they were dancing around and kind of having a little bit of imbibing and going on. But anyway, that might not have been in their mind, hey, look, I'm being Jesus to people, but they were sure were to me. And I think that's an amazing thing, to call us to think, how today can I maybe overcome my own self-doubt, my own maybe self-hate, any little shame I may have in my life? How can I recognize that Jesus is here, looking us in the eye and saying, hey, you're a part of this, you belong. You're part of my very body. You're here with me. I love you. No room for shame or self-hate and all that. Let's sit around at the table together. And that's what he's doing. He's inviting us to share in this table here together today. As we come forward to share the meal together today, let's feel and own that gift of Christ's love in our hearts and our life. No room for shame or self-doubt. The second thing the person in this gospel passage is thinking about this widow. Now, here's this person. To be a widow a couple thousand years ago was, number one, you were a female, which was definitely a strike against you. I hate to say that, that's horrible to say, but that's just kind of how it was, that you didn't have any sort of ownership of property, you couldn't, have a voice in things. And to be a widow really did even take it down another notch, because when bad things happened to people, they blamed the person. Like that they must have sinned or done something negative, and so if her husband died, it must have been her fault. Who knows what they were saying? And so then this widow, also the fact that women spoke through their husbands, so that she didn't have any ability to be able to speak out or speak for herself or seek to get help even. So 12 years of hemorrhaging and having this difficult, painful thing going on in her body and her life, no wonder how she must have felt really terribly about herself. So 12 years also, that's not just like saying, oh, it's just a long time. 12 years was saying like a number of perfection. It was almost like she was defined by this hemorrhaging, by this illness that she had. That consumed all of her. It was a number of wholeness. So this whole her was this. That's how she defined herself, was this illness that she had and the struggle that she was having. But here she sees Jesus. Jesus is going to do some big amazing miracle, and he's saying amazing things. And I'm sure she spent all 12 of these years feeling kind of unworthy and all that stuff. But yet, something about it makes her want to do something bold, something big, to reach out and actually touch Jesus, to reach out and touch his garment. That's a bold move. I mean, I think if anybody had seen it, they would have said, hey, you're going to the stockade, or whatever they said back then, to say like, hey, look, this is no good, this is not for you, you aren't supposed to be touching him, you're unclean. Not only politically, socially, and all that, but religiously she was unclean because of the hemorrhaging that was going on. That was in the Bible. Oh, I'm unclean, I can't be a part of this. But yet she overcomes all that and is boldly reaching out to touch Jesus. Whew, that's a big, big deal to think about her overcoming that. And to know that Jesus was there for her and he wouldn't judge her or condemn her. And he didn't. In fact, boom, you're healed. You overcome this. And whether the physical healing is aside, the deal is that she was back to be part of the community. She was back to be part of the voice. She was back to be part of her worshiping faith life. That was the big deal, her inclusion back into the community. So this big deal, this big bold thing that she does, it's a witness to me to think, what can I do that's bold? What can I do? I know that Jesus is going to be a steady force for me in my heart and my life, and I can be okay. What can I do that's bold? A bold Christian act. What would that look like? This past spring break, I took a bunch of students to D.C. And so they were all, some undergrad students and different students or whatever. And then we went to see different legislators and different, staff or whatever. And they were all sort of sheepish. It was the first time they'd ever done anything like this. First time, I've been around some of that too. And so this guy said something that was really, 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 really against kind of our social work value that we were there for. And the student that was there, I kind of looked around the room. Is anybody going to say anything? Did anybody notice that? Or are they just on their phone? And so, but they weren't. This one student kind of said, hey, can I probe that? Can I question that? She didn't say, hey, look, you're a jerk, whatever, but that was bold. I felt like that was really bold. She did it very politely, very clearly. This is where we stand. What you just said doesn't fit. And so I was so proud of her. That was the greatest thing in the world, to be able to have that bold move. Well, I think this woman in the gospel passage, that student, undergrad student that was kind of struggling to get her voice out, is a witness to us all, I think. How can we be bold in our Christianity? How can we be bold in our ability to love others? How can we be really audacious in the things that we do? That to have the hope and the longing and the know that Christ is with us and we can accomplish great things in our boldness of knowing Christ is with us. Well, the third person in this gospel passage, I know in other gospel passages he has a name named Jairus, but in this passage he's just called a temple leader, or a leader of the community. Well, here's a guy that, unlike Matthew and unlike the widow, he's kind of top dog. I mean, he's got a name, he's got a title, he's obviously got a big fancy home, he's got a lot of people around him and a lot of friends and a lot of people that are willing to kind of hang with him. He has a family. He had a daughter that was 12 years old. Again, that number 12, that number of wholeness and perfection. She was really at a great age. This was really an amazing thing that was happening. And that she died. Her life was over. But here comes Jesus and his willingness to say, I'm going to help. Now think about this. You're a big, hefty guy in the community, and people look to you, and you're a leader in the community, and you have a name, and you have a house, and obviously people that play flutes for you and stuff like that. I mean, all this is going on. I mean, this is a big deal. You're a big deal. I bet his tendency was, I've got this covered. I can do it myself. I'm the guy that can make it happen. I'm the one. I've got that bootstrap mentality. It's up to me. I got to make it happen. But he overcame that kind of a mentality of him being up on a pedestal in his community and saying, hey, look, I'm the guy that can do it. I don't need anybody else's help. I don't need to reach out to anybody else. But you know what? He overcomes all that garbage and says, okay, Jesus, I need some help. My daughter, I'm desperate. What am I going to do? And so Jesus drops everything and goes to be with him and brings life again into his house, brings life into his home again. Because this guy, this leader, was able to say, okay, I don't have to do everything all by myself. I'm not the answer to all my own problems. I'm not the hero of my own story here. But I am willing to have another person, my loving God who's here, to be a part of my life to help me make it through the day. I think that this is a big deal to think about for us in our life as well. I think that there's this society that we live in today that says, oh, you got to do it yourself. You got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You got to make it happen. Why don't you just go get a job? That'll make everything fine. Why don't you just go do this, do it for yourself? That's the message I think a lot of times that we receive. But you know what? We just can't do it by ourselves. It's impossible. We need each other. We need each other. I barely knew how to put the numbers up on that side today, but it hadn't been for Kat to kind of point it out for me. I mean, we just can't make this thing happen without each other. We got to make it happen with each other. I think this whole thing reminds me of a number of years ago when I worked more directly in social service. There was a guy at a housing project that I worked at, that I was involved in, and he came one day to get help. He had been unhoused for a long period of time. And he said, the line, I'll never ever forget it. It gets me today. I thought I could do it on my own, and I can't. But that was just like, wow, that you're willing to have the humility and the ability to be able to reach out and be a part of a community here. And man, he was able to live there, and he ended up getting into a permanent housing just because he said, I'm going to take away all the pretense and say, I need help. I could kind of do this with a couple of other people here. So I think being Christian in our life is the example of the guy in the gospel to say, I want to reach out, I want to be part of the community, I can't do it on my own. I share life with each other. So all these three people here, I think, are great examples of us. How do we live our Christian life? How are we able to overcome our shame and know that God invites us to the meal, to know that we are a part and we belong truly in his life? How do we kind of overcome our sheepishness or whatever society kind of holds us back in to be bold in our Christianity, to be bold in our love, to be bold in our care for one another? How can we do that and be a voice for those who need a voice for others? How can we also say, I'm not just going to do this all by myself. I'm going to live my life for others and with others and share the burden with one another. That's, I think, our Christian life. Community, boldness of love, and being able to recognize that we are worth it and we do carry the dignity of Christ in each one of us. Amen?
Amen.